The river stretched out like a ribbon of silver beneath the moon, restless and alive, whispering against the stones as if it carried secrets older than either of them. Sonn stood at the edge, his shoes damp from the wet earth, staring into the dark shimmer as though the current itself might answer all the questions he had been carrying. He had always been careful, the kind of man who tested every step before putting his weight down, the kind of man who believed control was safety. Yet tonight felt different. Something in the air was softening him, loosening the knot he had carried for years. Maybe it was the night breeze. Maybe it was her. She stood barefoot in the grass, her toes sinking into the cool blades, her hair loose and dark, catching glimmers of silver light. She had the kind of smile that wasn't loud but lingered, the kind that pulled at him without effort. He had known her only a short time, but he felt as if she had been orbiting his life long before he finally turned to notice. She tilted her head, watching him hesitate at the edge. He didn't need to say the words, she already knew the weight of his doubt. "You hesitate too much," she said softly, her voice almost blending with the river's murmur. He turned toward her, the moon catching her cheekbones, the delicate line of her jaw. "I don't know what happens if I step in," he admitted, the honesty surprising even him. Her smile deepened, not mocking but full of quiet daring. She moved closer, so close he could feel the warmth of her body even with the cool night around them. When she leaned in, her breath was warm against his ear. "Go with the flow." "I'm enjoying this," she whispered. The words slipped into him like a secret he wasn't supposed to hear, but once he did, he couldn't unhear them. She stepped back, her eyes glimmering with something both mischievous and tender, and he felt the pull of her presence more than the tug of the current at his feet. So he stepped forward. The water was cold at first, biting against his skin, but it was gentler than he expected, carrying him rather than dragging. She watched from the bank, her expression glowing with pride and something softer, something he couldn't name. And as he waded deeper, feeling the water take more of him, he realized it wasn't just about the river. It was about her. About letting himself drift, letting go of the fight to stay in control, trusting that the current, or maybe she, would hold him. When he looked back, she was already stepping in after him, the water curling around her ankles. Her laugh carried lightly across the rippling surface, a sound that filled him with warmth that had nothing to do with the night air. She moved gracefully, unbothered by the chill, as though she had always belonged here, in the middle of the unknown. "See," she said, closing the space between them, the water pushing gently at their waists now. "It doesn't hurt to let go sometimes." He wanted to answer, to agree, but his words caught somewhere in his chest. Instead, he studied her, the moonlight reflected in her eyes, the way her lips parted with the ease of someone who trusted the world around her. And something shifted in him, a longing, an ache he had been holding at bay for too long. They drifted together, the current nudging them closer until he could feel the brush of her hand against his. She didn't pull away. Neither did he. And for the first time in years, he felt weightless, as if the river had taken not just his body but everything he had been carrying. When they finally climbed back onto the bank, dripping and breathless, the grass cool beneath their feet, he looked at her and couldn't keep the question from spilling out. "Why me?" She tilted her head, her wet hair clinging to her neck and shoulders. "Because you don't see it yet. The way you hold everything so tightly, like if you let go, you'll break. But you won't. You'll just fall into something better." She reached up, brushing a strand of damp hair from his forehead, her touch lingering longer than necessary. "And because I like being the one who reminds you of that." The intimacy of her words was a weight and a gift. He wanted to answer, but instead he leaned into the silence between them, a silence that hummed with possibility. She smiled again, and this time it wasn't daring or mischievous but something softer, more open. As they sat in the grass, drying slowly under the pale light, he realized the night had shifted into something he hadn't expected. He hadn't planned for her, hadn't planned for this moment, yet here it was, as inevitable as the current itself. Her hand brushed against his again, this time more deliberate, her fingers intertwining with his. The gesture was simple, but it sent a warmth through him that no fire could match. The hours slipped by unnoticed. They talked in whispers, as though the night might listen too closely if they spoke too loud. She told him stories about her childhood, about sneaking out to watch thunderstorms, about running through fields in the dark just to feel the world without borders. He told her less, but she didn't mind. She seemed to understand that his silences were part of his story too. And when her head rested against his shoulder, the weight of her felt like an anchor he didn't want to lose. He thought about how strange it was to find something like this by a river in the middle of nowhere, on a night that began with hesitation. He thought about how her whisper still echoed in his chest, loosening something he hadn't known was tied so tightly. And he thought about how dangerous it was to want this, to want her, because once he let himself fall, there would be no return. Yet when she lifted her face to his, her eyes searching, her lips parting just slightly, he didn't think about danger anymore. He thought about surrender. He thought about what it meant to finally go with the flow. First kiss was tentative, not because of doubt but because of reverence. He wanted to taste her slowly, to let the moment expand until it filled everything. She responded in kind, her lips soft but insistent, her hand rising to the back of his neck as if she had been waiting for this too. Kiss deepened, the restraint slipping, the current of something greater than either of them pulling hard now, and he gave in to it. When they broke apart, both of them breathless, she leaned her forehead against his, her laugh soft and full of wonder. See? Not so hard to let go. He smiled, the weight of years lifting, and for the first time he believed her.